Welcome to MasterMinds Lessons in Leadership. I'm joined today by Peter Linneman, my co-host, where we discuss the intersection of strategy and leadership, which we feel is at the vortex of what makes great companies great. And we're pleased to welcome Scott Rechler, who is the chairman and CEO of RXR Realty. And Scott, I think the company was founded almost 15 years ago in 2007. And we'll let you give an overview of the business if you would, please.
Yeah, and thanks, Bill and Peter, for having me. I appreciate it. So we formed RXR Realty, as you noted, in January 2007. We had sold. Our prior company was a public company, a publicly traded REIT called Ferguson to SL Green at the time for $6.5 billion. And when we formed RXR, it was sort of a view that we saw our customers were changing. The world was changing quickly. Their needs were changing quickly. And so we felt to match sort of our business strategy of servicing our customers' need, we need to be more agile than the public markets at the time were offering us. So we decided to recapitalize our new business, RXR, as a private equity business with longer-term capital that would be leading the way as to where customers were going and trying to provide real estate solutions to those customers, primarily in the New York metro area. And then over the time we formed these funds to do that. We've raised about $9 billion of private equity, came back into the market in August of 2009 and began investing. Today, we have about $20 billion of assets under management. We're in the office building space. We're about 25 million square feet, 6,000 units of multifamily, either up and operational or under development, with another about 6,000 in a pipeline behind that. We're in the logistics business, infrastructure, debt, and again, really try to take a customer-centric and community-centric approach to our business and driving our strategy, primarily, as I mentioned, the New York metro area.
So, Scott, hearing when you started RXR, I think we knew one another about 3 or 4 years prior to that formation. And when I hear this, it makes me realize just how old I am. Because that means we've known one another, again, like 20 years or something, maybe more, who knows. So yes. It's been a pleasure. So let me ask you, as you talk about that, you've probably had to recalibrate your strategy over the last year, and I would imagine you're recalibrating today for the coming. You want to talk about that process and your thought process and your thinking in that regard?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know, to your point, I mean, one of my favorite sort of sayings and how we guide our company is regularly recalibrate reality. And you know, what we've sort of formalized this at RXR is that on an annual basis, we write an internal white paper where we try to have sort of eyes wide open, be intellectually honest with ourselves as to where we see things happening in the world, how that's impacting our customers, our market, our business. And generally, we publish this internally only so that we can, you know, really not hold back on anything, but then, you know, gives us a sense of conviction as to where we might want to invest, where we might want to divest, discipline on deals that might come in that we might then say, you know, we'd pass on those deals because it's not consistent with our view where the world's going and the research we've done, and a baseline that to recalibrate from, right? Here's what we thought was going to happen. Here's what's actually happening. And we actually started this back in 2005. And I think it was one of the reasons we sold our company in January of 2007, which was sort of the top of the market because of that sense. And I think, you know, so for us, recalibrating reality is a natural part of what we've done and have built a business model that is very agile at seeing the circumstances change and trying to shift and lead in that regard. And one of the challenges when you do that, obviously, is that you're not necessarily following where the market is. You're sort of trying to be ahead of where the market's going. And so, you know, there's a lot of second guessing while you're going through it, which means it requires a lot of communication and a lot of of good thought process that sort of serves as the foundation that you're making these decisions on as you move forward. COVID was something that was such an incredible accelerant, right? It really took 10 years of things that were happening and innovation and adoption of trends that we all sort of saw below the surface and accelerated in 10 months. And so it's required us to do what I sort of call is the post-pandemic pivot, which is a much more leaning into the change of what the post-COVID world is, because what existed before doesn't exist today, and it's not going to exist tomorrow. And so you really need to be much more, I think, accentuated in shifting strategies to reflect how fast the world's going to change, particularly, I think, in real estate and infrastructure, because people are going to live, work, and operate in urban environments different than they have before. They're going to use office space differently, housing differently, which is going to impact downtowns and infrastructure and retail. And so we're spending a tremendous amount of time shifting those strategies. The good news is, because these were trends that were happening, maybe not as pronounced, but they were happening anyway, we had already been positioning ourselves to move in that direction. We're now just moving at a much more rapid pace and a much more dramatic pace into areas where we think would be beneficiaries of this post-pandemic world, and moving away from areas that we think are going to be more obsolete, or an acceleration of that obsolescence that might happen in a post-pandemic world.
So, Scott, let me ask you one other question about what you just said, and then we'll talk maybe a little bit about leadership as a next step. You don't find a lot of companies that balance infrastructure and real estate. There are companies that specialize in infrastructure, companies that specialize in real estate. What led you to kind of do the hybrid model?
Yeah, so I would say it's twofold, right? One is, I mentioned that we were customer centric, sort of driving. The other thing we are is community centric, right? So we understand what's happening with our customers, what's their trend, but also what's happening in our community, what is driving the growth in our communities, what are some of the challenges that our communities are facing, and being committed to public service. So, for example, I was vice chairman of the Port Authority for 5 years, and in that experience, led the way for the largest public-private partnership of an airport at LaGuardia Airport, and the public-private partnership with the Goethals Bridge. And so, have had my touch of experience there. I was on the MTA board, and we brought in a number of team members at RXR that have served in public roles, whether in economic development under Mike Bloomberg, or at the state level or federal level. And so I think we have a sense as the importance of public-private partnerships and the interplay between having functioning world-class infrastructure and what that means in terms of the economic engine for the community at large and how that impacts real estate. And then there's also just a functional side. When you really think about infrastructure, and I would say we're really more greenfield, like building from the ground up, not necessarily buying what exists on infrastructure. There's a tremendous amount of parallels between that and real estate, right? The approval process requires a level of community outreach and engagement and navigating public processes, as well as being able to bring projects in on time and on budget along the way, and servicing all the different stakeholders in that mix. And so public-private partnerships has been something that we have focused on for a lot of years and feels very natural for us.
Gotcha. Okay, segueing into the conversation around leadership, there's a lot of talk nowadays across all companies about this concept of culture and how important that is to business success. Can you tell us a little bit about the culture you've created at RXR and how much it's meant to your business success?
Sure. Going back to that community-centric approach, part of what the culture that we've tried to create at RXR is based on our values of doing good and doing well means doing better. And so with every project that we work on, and every investment that we make in every property we own, we ask ourselves, how can we actually, at the same time as making those projects successful, help make the community around those projects where it exists more successful. And we actually, even in our business plans, have a doing good, doing well means doing better section where we actually talk about the metrics, whether that's sustainability or job training or other forms of community engagement and mentorship that we judge ourselves on a regular basis. And so what that has created as a culture is I would say, a greater sense of purpose, more of a mission-based culture at RXR. And so that, we feel, as the people that are working here, it's not just about executing on the business, but it's about executing on building stronger communities. And marrying a lot of our philanthropic efforts, our civic engagement, our investments, and our team's efforts holistically to do that, and judging our success holistically in that regard.
And let's talk about, as you look forward, you've got property, you've got debt, you do development, you have property sectors. I think you do some prop tech as well. How do you think about that basket of allocating resources to?
Yeah, I think they're very much interconnected, and you raise prop tech, and I think that's an important point because it's, in this post-COVID world, I think one of the things that has been accelerated is the digitization of the real estate business. And when you look at real estate embracing technology, of all the major industries out there, industry segments, we were number 2 or 3 at the bottom of what that has been, right? And so this has accelerated this because now our customers have an expectation that they're going to get a level of service and personalization and insights and capabilities that they get outside of the 4 walls of real estate that they hadn't gotten before. And we began to see this back in 2018 and in 2019, actually. Our white paper was entitled RXR 2.0, and we stood up a digital lab where we brought in McKinsey, and we've hired over the time now. We have 25 data scientists, product development people, engineers that work full-time for us on developing digital products and help us to serve our customers better, operate our buildings more effectively and efficiently, and operate our business more effectively and efficiently. And then we marry that with strategic relationships with Microsoft and others, and a digital venture fund where we invest in other companies that are prop tech companies that have solutions that help us, create address all those needs as well. And so it's I think that we're really beginning an incredible journey on this digitization side of the business, and it informs a lot of what we invest in. It informs the types of properties that we're building. Our focus on health and wellness, our focus on sustainability in our buildings and the infrastructure in our buildings, and how do you use not only the physical environment that we're building, but the digital, what we call the phygital connection, to be able to enhance all of that and change behaviors of the people that are in our buildings in a way that they can be more sustainable and healthier and more productive going forward. So it's to us, it's almost like it's a little bit ecosystem. And that ecosystem of all that expertise of the 500 team members we have as professionals at RXR, help us form our strategies and operate more effectively because of it.
So you're not still using VisiCalc and floppy disks?
Right.
Most of the viewers won't even know what that means, right?
Exactly.
Scott, going back to the subject of leadership again for a minute, you founded at least this company in a private form about 15 years ago. If somebody was to ask you what's the most profound leadership lesson you've learned over the last, 14, 15 years, what would you say?
A couple of things. I tend to go with stay humble, stay hungry, right? Because I found over my years, there's times where you're riding really high and it's easy to get carried away and get a sense of hubris and think you got it all figured out until you get all of a sudden something comes up and you realize you don't. And so, maintain that sense of humility, I think is key. And then on the other side, there's many times where you're facing challenges that are really difficult. And so staying hungry to dig yourself out of those spots, knowing that if you work hard, you push forward, you'll ultimately get there, right? And this is, in business and building companies, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and you need to keep, moving forward as you go through it. My father-in-law likes to say it differently. He says, some days you're the top dog, some days you're the hydrant. And so,
what a great phrase. I love it.
I try not to be that hydrant too often, but I think that humility is an important piece, and I've seen that not just even in business, but in the public sector as well. Right? It's easy to get caught up with yourself and your success, but and with that, then becomes that you really do realize that to be successful, it's a life of learning, and I know you both believe that, and this is one of the reasons you're doing these sessions, right? Is that to learn and help others continue to learn. But that's, and particularly now with this acceleration and how everything is changing so quickly, you can't really rest on your laurels. You got to keep, learning about where the future is going to go, not where it has been in the past.
So Scott, I can't remember if your parents are still alive or not, but if I told you I've got them on the phone right now, and I said, what are you most proud of, Scott? What makes you most proud? What would they say, do you think?
So my dad passed away now almost 10 years ago, but 11 years ago. My mom's still alive, thank God. So, and I think what they would say is commitment to community. That, in Judaism, there's a saying, Tikkun Olam, which means literally to repair the world. And that's something that, I take to heart and my team takes to heart, to do our part to make the world a better place, to give other people opportunities to excel, to try to make it more equitable, more sustainable, long term. And I think, people make decisions all day long of what you're going to do. And I think, we've been very focused, and I've been very focused on making that a priority as to where we allocate our time and resources.
So, Scott, one thing that Peter and I have learned through these various leadership sessions is that all the great leaders in the industry had a mentor. And so curious to see who was your greatest mentor. It might be more than one person, but your greatest mentor, and then what did they teach you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say, and I'm not sure if it's this industry or everywhere, but I think we're fortunate in the sense that so many people are willing to be your mentor. I mean, I started in this business and I was, I think, CEO back when I was like 26 years old. And I remember calling around to all the great old timers, whether it was Sam Zell or, Lou Rudin, where I just would go and I'd either have lunch with them or ask their advice. And I've never been surprised at how open they are to it and how much time they'd be willing to share with you and insights. So for any viewer, by the way, that's the first time I would encourage you is never hesitate to pick up the phone and tap someone for advice, because you'd be surprised at how often they'll be there and give you their candid advice. I would say in particular, I had two mentors that were impactful. One was Lou Ranieri, who was someone, again, literally, again, I was taking our company public. I was maybe 24, 25 years old, Red Liars Poker. Came back and noticed he happened to be a tenant in one of our buildings, called him up and asked if we'd have lunch. And then I'd have lunch with him, almost every week and then every other week. And it became great friends along the way. And I think, what he had taught me was that always look for the playbook of the future. Don't rely on the playbook of the past. And that complexity can be your friend if you can master that complexity, right? And so that gave me a lot of ability to tackle things I otherwise wouldn't have tackled during my career. And then the other guy, a mentor of mine, who was a guy named Mickey Steinberg, and Mickey was president of Portman. He actually built the Embarcadero Center, and then he was head of Disney and built Disney in Asia and a bunch of other projects. But as an old Southerner, 82nd Airborne guy, he just tells you everything with the drawl, straight up, so it's so clear you can't really miss what it is, but in a way that's tough, but resonates. And he really, had taught me over time about the importance of this recalibration, right, and facing that reality and having those eyes wide open. And I think I would say the other thing that he really taught me, coming from the building business, from the real estate business, was it's to really be successful. It's not about building buildings; it's about building businesses. And what are the elements that you need to do to build a business that's dynamic and sustainable and can grow on a continuous basis versus a project, meaning a building. And so that's something that he was very helpful with.
By the way, Sam will appreciate you referring to him as one of the real old timers. We'll edit that out. No.
So, I don't know if I said that, by the way, but we'll see.
You mentioned, and I see behind you, doing good, doing well. Bill behind him has the sign integrity and generosity.
Right.
Just a moment, if you would, on your thoughts on philanthropy, your focus, if you would, and why.
Yeah, I think as I mentioned earlier, right, the importance of individuals taking responsibility to make their communities stronger places, and whether that's philanthropy, from a financial standpoint, or personal engagement in philanthropy, or personal engagement in some form of public service, formally or informally. I think it's incumbent upon all of us to do that. And to me, I feel over the years, our country and its citizens has become more focused on relying on government to solve our problems, rather than taking accountability ourselves for solving our problems and relying on their elected officials. And Justice Brandeis once said, the most important political office is that of private citizen. And I take that to heart, right? Which is, one of the most important things is vote the right people in, work for the people that you think are going to do the best job. But then also you yourself can create change and make people's lives better, no matter who you are, where you are, and what organization, what economic level, you can have an impact. And so that's something that I try to live by and encourage my team members. And again, very consistent, as you pointed out here with the sign, with our culture and value set at RXR.
So Scott, one final question. Let's assume you're sitting around a table with the next generation of leadership of your company. What advice would you give them today?
This is a generational moment in our economy and in our industry, and frankly, if I was young, not Sam's age.
Trust me, you are young.
But when I was 26, 27, they're able to see the world through a lens that hasn't been polluted with all the things that we've seen, all the things that we've looked at, right? All the norms that we've learned to accept as norm. And the reality is their ability to have that objectivity of what, without that weight of the past, is a great asset. And, so what I would encourage them all to do is lean into that asset and recognize that these are the moments where people can help redefine our industry, where and to look at things in new ways and do things in new ways that we haven't done before. So while it's challenging in the sense there's a lot of moving pieces, this is the time where they can rise at a much faster pace than when we're going through just the historical sort of stability that we've had over the last number of decades.
So take the fresh look, right?
Right, the fresh perspective, and use their untarnished view of the world as an asset.
Yeah.
Well, Scott, thank you. Thank you so much for your time and insights. Bill, I'll let you take it from here.
Yep. No, this has been great, Scott, and a lot of good content and a few yucks along the way. So it was a perfect interview. So thanks for doing it, and we look forward to editing it and really giving everybody just a class piece of learning and education. So thank you.
No, but I appreciate it. Peter, I appreciate it. Good seeing you guys, and thank you very much for inviting me on.